Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our industry insights this morning. We try to do this quarterly with the MichAuto community, and so welcome this morning. We've got a topic this morning which we've heard a little bit about. That topic called tariffs, and our team said, "Well, what do we call this session?" And we said, "Well, we'll give you a download on tariffs until it changes again," and it changed yesterday. So with us today, and we're going to get right into it, is one of our uh, long-term investors and the partners of ours at UHY. And I'm going to just introduce them briefly. Tom Alongi is the partner at UHY LLP, and he is also the managing director of UHY Advisors. And joining him is Charlie Clevenger, and Charlie is a principal at UHY Consulting. So many of you may know UHY for the firm that does accounting and does audit services and things like that. But it is a much broader scope of a firm. And one of the things we've had the benefit with Tom and his team, and I talk with him quite regularly, and they put on some great manufacturing summits, which some of you may have been to. But they have a lot of background and they go deep into the industry. Charlie's from the industry. Tom's been working with the industry his whole career. And so with that, we're going to go into a little bit of 101, how we got here, where we're going, and then give you the latest, and then some tools and tips. We're not going to take live questions in the chat, but if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and we will follow up with you directly, and we'll connect you either to Tom and or Charlie directly on those questions. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and it's all yours.
Yeah, appreciate it. We really appreciate the opportunity, Glenn. And yeah, we have a topic that obviously is changing by the minute. And very instantly enough, we've been doing our manufacturing and automotive outlooks for more than 15 years now. And we've touched on this subject matter quite a bit over the last, certainly since COVID. So what I want to do in the next, 5 or 7 minutes is kind of set the stage of kind of how we got here and why is this tariff such a big issue today? And then I'm going to turn over to Charlie, who really has a deep expertise in his team and how do we deal with tariffs? He's done it in industry. How do we either find workarounds? How do we address it? How do we tackle it? So that's what I really want to do. And so I want to just start out with, this is a slide that I've been using for 5+ years because it really tells the story of American manufacturing. And yes, you look at employment in manufacturing has been on a downward spiral for decades, right? And we've seen that. And we actually have less than 14 million individuals employed in goods making industries, like even concluding in construction. Whereas on the service sector, we have almost 130 million. So we really have become a service-based economy, and that started in the late 90s. In the late 90s, 1998, China entered the World Trade Organization. We had NAFTA in the late 90s, and that really was the beginning. I don't want to say the end, but the beginning of what we saw was a race to the bottom. And a big part of my career was working on this bottom line on productivity, right? And that's what we did. We did that so well. We became more productive, right? And then after, you can see from 08, 010, everything just kind of flatlined. It was kind of a little bit of a sucking sound in manufacturing, and our productivity, everything flattened out. I'm giving you the Cliff Note version here, but in 2020, you can all imagine what happened with COVID. But it was the light bulb moment that was really shined a light on American manufacturing. We said, wait a minute, we don't have personal protective equipment in our hospitals, ventilators, chip shortages, pharmaceutical shortages, and the list went on and on around critical supplies that really are very important to our national defense for manufacturing. So what has really been on the minds of our government is to reignite and restart American manufacturing. And yes, we can compete, and we've been working on that, but we need a level playing field. And I think this is where the tariffs really began to become the the what's been shining a light on is this big trade deficit that we have, right? And it's continuing to grow. And it's been growing in this certainly in Q1 and contributed to our negative GDP because of the threat of tariffs. Everything was being shipped that wasn't stuck to the ground in some countries. So inventories levels are certainly creeping up around the country. But this trade deficit has continued to grow. And is it the most concerning issue? No, but it is contributing when you align it with our fiscal deficits that we're having, that this is an opportunity to close some of that fiscal deficit if we can increase manufacturing in the U.S. And so this is why tariffs are becoming such a spotlight. And you maybe have heard of these, why are we, beating up Mexico and Canada? Well, that's some of our biggest, trade deficits do come from our neighboring countries. Now, are they really ripping us off? I don't know about that, but, there is certainly a reciprocal trade imbalance that needs to be addressed. And if we can make some inroads here, it'll be very positive, obviously, for American manufacturing and our national defense. So when you think about what is contributing to this big trade deficit, and it really is something you're hearing in the news every day. Obviously, pharmaceuticals was in the news yesterday. You hear the number of billions of dollars are being invested by pharmaceutical companies to restart some pharmaceutical manufacturing in the U.S. These are all very important signals. When you look at over 70% of our pharmaceuticals are imported, so you look at, we've gone from producing over 40% of chips to less than 9%. So these are big imbalances that need to be addressed. And certainly on electrical equipment, semiconductors is a spotlight. Vehicles obviously is a spotlight, and pharmaceuticals. Machinery, believe it or not, we import a lot of equipment, and that is a real opportunity that we see for American manufacturing. I don't think we're going to be making Nike shoes here again, as you might think, but advanced manufacturing and the opportunities that we have are incredible. When you look at the rise of potential AI, humanoid robotics, amount of advanced technologies that are happening, this is really the turning point for American manufacturing that we think over the next decade could really increase revenues for the U.S. and make the U.S. more competitive. So we're very excited about manufacturing. And so when you look at, why tariffs? Well, in 2018, when President Trump was in office, he put on quite a number of tariffs on aluminum, steel, right? We managed through that. We did. It's manufacturers. And the opportunity, when you look at about $4 trillion being imported, probably the opportunity for revenue is in the $300 to $400 billion range. Now that revenue, when done correctly, could be used to reignite a lot of our supply chains that are needed for American manufacturing, from raw materials, critical minerals. These are all vital supply chains that would make us more competitive. And so with that, I just wanted to kind of set the stage of where we are and why the tariffs are such in the spotlight. So, and I want to leave the rest of the conversation really for Charlie to walk through the latest tariff developments and how do we tackle this. And Charlie, just let me know and I'll advance the slides as you need them. You're on mute.
I promised I wouldn't do that, and then I did it. So my apologies. Thanks, Tom. We're going to talk about the latest tariff developments from a U.S. perspective primarily, a little bit about methods for managing the situation, and then some ways to mitigate or improve your tariff exposure. This first group of tariffs are really not new. This all started in the first Trump administration, where he focused on aluminum and steel, the relationship with China, and then reinventing NAFTA as USMCA. So what's happened in the second Trump administration is that he's expanded scope and also closed some perceived loopholes. With the aluminum and steel, there's no duty drawback available now, and he's recommitted to these tariffs. And the reason that for doing that is the aluminum and steel industry in the United States and the opportunity to build and strengthen a core set of industries. From a China standpoint, Section 301, as we all know, there was an escalating set of tariffs and counter tariffs that were established by the U.S. and China. The tariffs got to the point where it made little sense to import much of anything from one country into the other unless you absolutely had to have that product or good. Just earlier this week, in the last 2 days, there's been a 90-day hold placed on those additional tariffs while negotiations continue. However, the base tariffs, Section 232, aluminum and steel, and the base 301 tariffs are still in place. So for the moment, we're largely going back to where we were, with the exception again that in April, no duty drawback was added to the provisions. And then finally, within North America with Canada and Mexico, in March, we started with an additional 25% tariff. But in April, that was paused. And so if you have USMCA qualified goods, you're not receiving any additional tariff treatment at this point. The duty drawback is allowed, but only for USMCA qualified goods, and therefore it puts a lot of emphasis on being USMCA qualified in this process. And those negotiations, we understand, are continuing. We'll see how those turn out. So these are what we call the foundational tariffs that were created back in 18 and 19 and have been refined here in the last several months. So, Tom, if we go on to the next slide, we can talk about the newer tariffs. The largest and probably the most important category, or at least the most popular, would be the reciprocal tariffs under the Fair and Reciprocal Plan. Those were initiated in April. Tariffs were largely put into place based on sort of a countervailing approach, although you could see some other factors coming into play. Vietnam was hit harder, for example, than countries like Malaysia and India, in part, we believe, because China and Korea have transferred some manufacturing into Vietnam. But at the end of the day, the stated goal here is to get trade balance with these countries, back to Tom's earlier comments. Tentative agreement was reached over the weekend with the UK. This is the first of what are reported to be a series of revised tariff deals with many countries. We'll just have to see how this process unwinds. One thing I would note is that these tariffs do not apply to goods that are already subject to the aluminum and steel tariff, Section 232. So some of the stacking that was occurring early on, that's been pulled back. The auto tariffs that were announced in early May, those have been largely pulled back on USMCA qualifying parts and automobiles. but for imported autos, those are still in place. And then again, the duty drawback is not there. So if you're looking for that, duty drawback has largely gone away in these agreements. The most interesting one for me is the de minimis rule. If you go back to the 1930s, you could import $5 of goods and not pay tariff on it because the thinking was that, it's of such small value that it's not worth the trouble. That has grown over time to $800 per shipment. And there are millions of these shipments constituting billions of dollars of goods that are coming into the country. This again apparently looked like a loophole to the current administration. They've plugged it. It is subject to a much higher tariff. From what we can tell, the de minimis tariff is still at the higher rate. We haven't seen anything that formally confirms that that's been reduced in line with the reduction on the Section 301 tariffs on China. So de minimis is impacting a lot of smaller companies that import small orders and Chinese importers who broke up their shipments so that they were under the $800 maximum shipment value. Finally, the tariff stacking has largely been put on hold. It was put on hold retro to March 4th, 2025. So that the IEEPA tariffs and the Section 232 tariffs are not cumulative for a variety of countries. And now with the announcement on China, the tariff stacking there is also effectively pulled away. So an expansion of the scope of tariffs. It's changing every day, as Glenn said. I got up this morning, in fact, to see what was new from yesterday in prep for this discussion. And it's going to continue to change. And that's just something we're going to have to understand and address. So if we move on to how do we manage the business in this new environment, we like to think of it as really 3 steps. The first is ensuring compliance. Let's make sure that we have accurate country of origin, COO. That's critical. And we're finding some instances where maybe that wasn't exactly accurate. The accurate use of the harmonized tariff codes is critical as well. We know there's flexibility there, and that's one of the tools you can use to mitigate your risk is comparing HTS codes to see which one best fits you. The second phase, financial management. For some companies, this is a significant expense. For others, not so much. But if it's a significant expense, we recommend approaching this the same way you do other significant components of cost in your business, making sure you have accurate data, forecasting it so that it's accurately in your financial forecasts. And then finally, probably the right up there with compliance is improvement. What we found in industry when we went through the 18-19 tariffs in the first Trump administration was that we were most effective if we formed a cross-functional team and we focused not just on the supply chain, but we focused on other aspects of the product design and the value stream and the manufacturing footprint as well. So an active improvement process is extremely important. So moving on to what are some ways you can reduce your tariff exposure, and we've listed 11 here. We've grouped some things, but there are certainly others that could fit in very, very specific situations. Alternative country of origin. Do you have the country of origin correct? Are there ways to change the value stream and the value add of the products? Those value add requirements to establish country of origin vary by country. They are not uniform across all countries. So that's an important point. Do you have the best HTS code? Some products and components could qualify under 2, 3, 4, even 5 different HTS codes. which one is most appropriate to your products so that you're in compliance, but also using a code that minimizes your tariff exposure. Two things that were popular 10 years or so ago, and they've kind of gone out of fashion, but they're coming back. Free trade zones, when you're bringing product into the U.S. that you intend to export. For example, you might be bringing goods in from China, but then you expect to resell those in Canada. Free trade zone is a perfect solution to mitigate your tariff exposure. And then shipping goods in bond, such that you're not taking possession. It's in the bonded warehouse. You do not pay the duties until the product is removed from the warehouse. There are companies that are betting that these tariffs will largely be minimized in the next few months, and they're putting inventory into bonded warehouses, betting that these tariffs will go away, and when they release the goods and have to pay for the tariff, that there'll be less. One rule that gets forgotten a lot is the rule of first sale. If you have a distributor that's importing products into the U.S., you're not paying duty based on, or tariffs based on, their price to you, but rather the imported price. So you have a lower base for your tariffs. A lot of the duty drawback options have been eliminated, but there are still options for that. If you're moving business, if you're moving product within your company, reevaluating your transfer prices is a worthy process. Obviously, there are rules around that, and you want to be in compliance with GAAP. But at the end of the day, a good transfer price analysis is helpful. Alternate value streams and localized production, which is the last point here, kind of go together. We've always liked the rule in industry that says we make where we sell and we buy where we make. And to the extent that you can do that, it is definitely in your best interest. A lot of these other issues, supply chain risks, tariff risks, and so forth, currency risks, those all go away if you can have a localized footprint. Clearly, spreading the tariff is also an option, commercial negotiation with customers and suppliers. I saw one report recently that the Section 301 tariffs that were implemented back in 2018 and 2019 largely didn't flow to consumers. Of the total tariff of 25%, only about 1% made it to consumers at that point. The rest was spread throughout the system, and that's certainly still an option here. And then you can always look at how you structure the price or cost in your price. So for example, if you're providing engineering services to a supplier, the supplier could pay you for those services, or vice versa. They could sell those services to you separate from the sale of the goods. So you can decouple the manufacturing from the sales, administrative, and engineering activities. So there are a variety of methods you can employ to reduce your exposure here. So Tom, back to you.
That's it. Just a summary on our team, and if you need it. Obviously, Charlie's background is, and Lisa's is Bradford, our most extensive from industry experience. But and what I would want to say, we gave you a very cliff note version here in the last few minutes. But the opportunity really for what we see is for American manufacturing is we can compete, but we need to reimagine manufacturing and how you do things in many cases. And that's what we've been working on with clients for the last, certainly since COVID, to be built to compete. And we're excited about the future. This too shall pass. And I think ultimately where tariffs will ultimately land, when you look at the average tariff is 2.5% to 3% in the U.S., will likely end up in the 5 to 10% range is likely where everything will land. But that is just my guess from looking at the data. So,
Tom and Charlie, thank you. Appreciate you guys taking the time. Is it okay to share the slides with the audience?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
All right. So to the audience, we'll send them out and we'll share that with our investor community. Thank you for that summary, Charlie. It was, I think we forget what we've been through in the last 60 to 80 days, but thank you for the summary and also these methods to reduce, because there's no question manufacturing footprint's going to change. So how suppliers, how companies navigate, mitigate, absorb, spread, pass up the food chain, whatever it may be, we're going to have to do that. And you're right. This is a resilient industry.
Yep.
And this too shall pass. So Charlie, thank you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And Tom, thank you for being with us too.
You're welcome.
And everybody, thanks for jumping on this morning. We keep it to a half hour, quick hit for you to get the morning going. And again, we'll follow up and send this out. So, and I just want to thank you, HY, for taking the time, and also Tom and your company for supporting MichAuto and being a big part of our investor community.
We appreciate the opportunity, and always will continue to support MichAuto. So thank you.
You got it. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.